what about strength training and muscle building? Or at least we had a discussion about this. So what do you believe is the value um, of training outside of the sport? So fitness, lifting heavy, lifting explosive, all kinds of lifting.
I believe, personally, for me, I believe, and I've learned that from John. I used to train like a bodybuilder before, because I thought in my early days of competition that was the most efficient way to do things. Because it was like I was watching Jean-Claude Van Damme, Arnold Schwarzenegger. We thought back in the day that was the thing. That's how we should do it, to get ready for a fight. But I realized later on that it's all about efficiency. And some guys, they don't lift at all, and they're doing pretty well. So I do cross training mostly for longevity. It's mostly for like a therapy. It's more therapeutic than for performance. It's to keep my body healthy, to do certain movement that are different than what I do every day in the gym in combat sport, to keep me healthy and athletic.
So all the interesting movement stuff that you've done outside the sport, that was for therapeutic?
Mostly therapeutic. I think it could transcend to performance, but it's mostly therapeutic. I do not believe that squatting 5 plates or bench pressing 3 plate will make me a better fighter. I do not. I believe actually it could hurt me more. It could damage me more than benefit me.
So, Gordon, as somebody who on Instagram posts a lot of pictures of you being shredded and huge, what's the value of strength?
So I do
sport?
like a combination of John got us big into like gymnastics type movements, like toes to bar and muscle ups and things like that when we were young. Like toes to bar, because that's like the exact motion you have to do when you're retaining guard. It's knees to chest. So I do a lot of that stuff in combination with, I do a lot of, opposite of George, I do a lot of bodybuilding workouts where I do like a basic split, like a chest and triceps, back and biceps day. And my idea is that weightlifting should always be a supplement to jiu-jitsu. So you shouldn't be missing a jiu-jitsu session to lift weights. So I train jiu-jitsu every day, and I lift 3 to 4 times a week. I feel like lifting 7 days a week for me is too much. And the lifting takes a lot of energy when you do like hard lifts like that. But my idea is, if you want to get good at jiu-jitsu, do jiu-jitsu. And if you want to be bigger and stronger, lift weights and eat food. And I generally don't go super heavy when I lift, because you start putting crazy weights, then start tearing muscles and stuff. So I usually do moderate weights with a very high rep range, like 4 sets of 20 with a drop set at the end to fatigue the muscles, break the fibers, and grow.
Okay, so 4 sets of 20. That's interesting. So that's more for endurance and raw strength.
Yeah, and also I think closer to competition, I'll pick the intensity up. And while there's no real way to get significant gains in VO2 max, I think that lifting and just getting used to mentally redlining gets me kind of in competition shape. Because a lot of times in jiu-jitsu, the guys I'm training with, they're not on a technical level where they can physically exhaust me to the point where I feel like I'm going to die. But I get most of that like when I'm wrestling, because I'm not as efficient in wrestling, so I get a lot more tired. And lifting, if you do like 4 sets of 20 leg press to squat, and you go back and forth, like you're like about to die at the end. And I feel like it gets me in the mental habit of redlining before competition.
But does muscle help you? So like the actual mass of muscle, like that. So
I think being stronger will always help in a combat.
Will always help.
Yeah, to some degree. It's not going to be to a degree where it overrides efficiency, but I think that it can't help can't hurt being stronger.
Well, there's a bunch of people who believe, depending on the sport, that strength can quickly become have detrimental effects to efficiency. So
yes,
like
I agree with that.
Certain kind of, I mean, if strength is like very purely applied to the exact movements of the sport. So in judo, the explosiveness you need is very difficult to replicate in any kind of way except by doing judo.
Yeah. I mean, for us, You always have to understand there's only so much technique that can overcome a certain amount of strength. Like if we all try to fight a silverback gorilla, it's going to kill us. But that being said, I do think that, like, for example, heavyweights are usually the least technical because they rely on their size and strength to beat smaller people. But I think that if you stay with the discipline of doing everything very precise, and I train with a lot smaller people most of the time, so I get out of the habit of using my strength. I think if you're very precise with the way that you train, I think that the extra size and strength can help you.
Quick question: how would you fight a silverback gorilla? I mean, is there which animal do you think you can actually defeat that would be impressive? That most people would say you can't.
You know, I don't have an answer to this.
I thought you were going to say.
I want to say that me and John had like a 4-hour discussion on this one time. I'm like, what would win, bear or gorilla? And he went into like this whole dissertation about how like jaguars spin underneath and like berimbolo silverbacks and kill them and like rip their artery and their legs out. It was amazing.
I guess, okay, so before we talk about strength, John, let me ask you, what do you think people would be surprised by if two animals faced, one of them would win, and people wouldn't predict that? So they would be surprised by the effectiveness of certain animal at fighting in the, whether it's in the forest, in the jungle. So let's
wait, slow down here.
Okay. So there's two animals of different species fighting, and most people would pick. So, for example, the lion gets a lot of credit for some reason. I'm not exactly sure why. The king of the jungle. Well, I a lot of people told me that the lion, for example, the tiger can beat a lion.
Yeah, this is one of those age-old debates.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, in grappling, in fighting, it feels like some animals use teeth and some use other parts of their body also. Like bear, actually, I don't even know how they
have extraordinarily powerful and long claws, and in addition, they're powerful biters as well.
So I wonder, and the same with the silverback. I don't know how much they're. I love that we're having this discussion.
We need Joe Rogan for this discussion.
I think so.
Yeah,
I think so.
Your question has gone in about 5 different.
So
directions.
it started with strength, and let's go back there, which is, do you think for an athlete in jiu-jitsu, let's stick to grappling. Do you think strength is helpful or detrimental?
I've always believed that 2 things will create whatever effectiveness you have in grappling. Those are your skill set and your attributes. And the best athletes are those who excel in both. Don't kid yourself. If someone gets twice as strong by some kind of magic potion, they're going to be a more effective grappler. If someone gets twice the level of endurance that they had previously, they will be a more effective grappler. These physical attributes have a very important outcome on a very important effect upon the outcome of matches. It's always a good thing to be stronger. It's always a good thing to have better endurance. It's always a good thing to have better balance, or whatever other attribute you throw out there. Gordon's point was, okay, everyone agrees on that, but there's a problem. In order to build these things, you have to carve into other elements of your training regimen. And then it becomes, well, which becomes more important? Increases in strength or increases in skill? There comes a point where investing in strength training starts to get diminishing returns. I can't tell the difference between someone who bench presses 300 pounds on the mat versus someone who bench presses 400 pounds. But that's a big difference. That's a 100-pound difference. And for an athlete to go from bench pressing 300 pounds to 400 pounds, that would require a great deal of training effort and focus. But if I can't tell the difference when I grapple them, then why bother? Okay, once you get to a certain strength level, it doesn't really help that much to go from a 400-pound bench press to a 450-pound bench press. At that stage, you're really getting a diminishing in returns on your training investment. Now, skills, on the other hand, experience far, far less in terms of diminishing returns. Every new skill you develop can translate very, very well into big increases in performance. Look at the example of Gary Tonin that we talked about earlier. Investments in guillotine
made a significant improvement in his effectiveness in matches and led directly to some of his most important victories. But if he had invested the same amount of training time in developing a bench press that was 25 pounds more than previously, that would have had no outcome, no influence on the outcome of those matches. So the question always becomes, yep, everyone acknowledges that these physical attributes are important, and everyone understands that becoming stronger or fitter is a desirable thing, and every athlete should work on them. The interesting question becomes, okay, at what point do you start to say, I'm not going to be helped by further increases in strength training or endurance training? And my point with my athletes is, in the overwhelming majority of cases, if there's any kind of doubt, invest more heavily in skill training than attribute training, especially once you get to a certain level on the attributes.
Well, the interesting thing that I think you should account for with strength training is there's Instagram. There's the world. It seems to be more fun to build muscle mass. It's like an addiction that people have.
Yeah. There's also economic elements too. Like most people, I hate to say this, but it's true. Most people are more concerned with image than function, and it's hard to sell a fighter or a jiu-jitsu athlete who doesn't look like one.
Looks like Fedor.
Yeah, it's a tough sell. Now, you can do it in fighting and jiu-jitsu because ultimately it's about whose hand is raised at the end of the match. And you could even use it as a selling point. You can be a guy that doesn't look like he should be winning, but he is winning. That is a selling point. But if you give most people a choice between looking like Arnold Schwarzenegger and winning matches versus looking like Fedor and winning matches, most people will select, I wish I'd rather look like Arnold Schwarzenegger. And so most athletes feel almost like an economic compulsion to be in good shape and in order to advance their marketability.
Yeah, Nike's not going to sponsor Fedor or Tank Abbott.
Yeah, Tank Abbott, no. Fedor maybe.
But yeah, we at the very top. There's something about aesthetic, like image of strength and power.
So it's also a personal thing. If you look at yourself in the mirror, do you like what you see? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Do you find yourself attractive? You know, what can you do to make you look better? You know, I think to me it was something. One of the reasons I work out is also for that.
Well, I'm sure if Fedor looks in the mirror, he says, I look damn good today.
Yeah, it could be too. It's also a genetic factor. Some people, you know, it's harder for them. I mean, yeah.